radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Fission radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear. Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission radio show. Thank you for joining us. Today is March 3rd, 2017. It's 8 o'clock here on the West Coast. Today I have with us Jose Gonzalez, who is I guess he calls himself a counselor. I think that's the term you like. Welcome to the show, Jose. Thank you for joining us once again.
I prefer relationship coach, but
okay. A relationship coach. Okay. That goes to show you we didn't have enough time to figure out how to introduce him today. So relationship coach. We had this ongoing conversation before about the need for coupling. We were talking, about why we feel this need that we're not okay if we're not inside relationships. So we thought we'd pick that conversation back up. So welcome to the show, Jose.
Thank you for having me, and I apologize for having missed the February 14th show. But if anyone cares, I slept great that day. I was listening to your intro. I've always enjoyed your intro to the show, and a couple of things kind of stick out there. In your intro, you say, and I'm sure you did your intro, months or years ago, and you probably don't even listen to it anymore. But you say, love is greater than fear, and happiness is resistance.
Yes, I do say that. And actually now I say I'm happy to resist.
Right.
Since we have the Trump nation, I am very happy to resist.
Well, let's see how that's going to work out. Of course, excuse me. I do want to point out, I have this issue a lot because I speak and people think that I know what I'm talking about, and therefore I am the king of the hill, and it's their duty to knock me off the hill because I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But I do want to point out that everything I say is my opinion based on my personal experience, my own research with internet, actual book learning at the library, and my experience with my clients. Now, that having been said, I reach certain conclusions based on my own personal experience, which is unique to me, and therefore can hardly be construed as factual for everybody. And it may apply to you, and it may apply to Bertha, but it may not apply to Georgetta and Paul. But I'm putting it out there so people can start thinking, because my experience with relationships is people need a lot of work. People need a lot of work. People think everybody has what it takes to be in a successful relationship. But if that were so, what am I doing in the counseling slash relationship coach business, right? Uh, as it is, statistics. Let me see. In the state of Texas, I provide relationship enhancement workshops for couples who are intending to get married. And with my certificate, they get a substantial discount when they purchase a marriage license. Albeit, I'll agree with half of y'all out there. Why would anybody want to get legally married anyway? Yes, we're not. We're gonna circumvent that question. The point is, these are people who do want to get legally married, and they come to my workshops to get a discount. Now, before every workshop, I look up the statistics again, and divorce rates are still, well, it's not really a rate. They show it as 3 out of 5. More than 3 out of 5 marriages will end in divorce today. Statistically, that's a little more than 60%. I held a workshop one time with a guest host or a guest uh, facilitator, and when I was speaking of these divorce statistics, she spoke up and told the couples, wait a minute, regardless of these statistics, your chances are still 100%, right? You have a 100% chance of having a successful relationship. And she said, at the very least, it's a 50-50 transaction. And yes, I said, yes, I agree with that. Everyone has a 50-50 chance because we are only in control of our own actions.
Right.
Therefore,
We're only 50% of the relationship.
right, exactly. And our problem in wanting to couple is that we usually get in, and this is my opinion, of course, we usually get into the couple with the wrong intention, or at least the wrong mindset. And you, Lonnie, you and I were speaking briefly about this, and you said, no, I think everyone should be in a couple. You believe that,
I think we're stronger as partners. I think
right?
humans make stronger, healthier human beings. They go through life healthier. I mean, life's experience is a stronger experience when you're paired up. That's what I think.
Okay, good, good.
We're
Now,
50%. I mean, even our biology, we're all 50%. I mean, we belong together. We're made for each other. You know what I mean? Like that's just the puzzle doesn't fit until we're both there. You know, people have to be together. That's the issue. That's what
oh,
I think.
that's very romantic. That's
I
that's
know.
very that's very romantic. But you know,
Probably, yeah.
the
Why I'm single here, Jose. I'm not realistic. I get you the message. I've been to lots of therapy.
okay, well, it is very romantic. But I will point out that romance in relationships is really the newest thing. Well, I shouldn't say that because the 20th century and the 19th century and now the 21st century are kind of adding new things to relationships. But romance in relationships has really only started at about the 13th or the 14th century, right? Until then, most relationships were just kind of natural. It was sexual. A couple met, got together, had sex, had children, so on and so forth. It wasn't until the onset of knighthood where a woman would see a knight in shining armor and say, oh, here's my kerchief.
Jose, do you mind if I interject here? Let's be realistic. Women were given away, they were traded. Most marriages were arranged. Women did not have control of their lives in most cultures, women, at least in the Western culture, women didn't have control. So let's be clear what it was like for women coming from Europe, anyways.
Right, right. I
Or
agree.
you were a charlatan, or you got in that way. You accidentally got pregnant and then you were hushed away. And then if some poor lucky gent felt sorry for you, he would pick you up and you'd immediately marry him and stay with him no matter how horribly he treated you.
Till death do us part. Yes. Okay, hold on, hold
And
on.
that's the mirror of what people saw as coupling. I get you there.
Okay, so take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Everything's okay, Lonnie. Yes, I agree. But you see what I mean. And with that as a back, if
Are you
I'm gonna
there?
have, I'm still talking. I'm
I
still
didn't hear
talking.
you. I apologize.
Okay. Okay, well, with that as a background, then you agree that there was no romance until women started thinking, I'm going to be forced into marrying somebody. If I have to be forced into marrying somebody, I would rather marry this guy over here. So I'll give him my kerchief, right? So he'll take into battle and he'll have something to fight for. And it started being very romantic. That the knight would wear the lady's colors and so on and so forth. But anyway, uh, that's how romance started. In other parts of the world, romance was still not quite there. Yes, uh, we had love, and this is why I touched on your opening statement of the show, because we had the most basic of love, and that's the love between mother and child. And and remember, we're thinking back, a few hundred years here. This love between mother and child is difficult for men to understand because we don't have that bond. We don't have something growing inside of us. I mean, the concept is just weird to men, you know.
Well, the concept is weird to women too, there, Jose. Let's be
Yeah.
clear.
Well,
It's
well,
like,
well.
oh my God, all of a sudden you're like, say what? Like, what's going to happen to me?
Yeah, yeah. See, but then women are able to put it together, and here you have this humongous daughter that's probably bigger than you are, and you're like, oh my God, this came out of me, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, or something, right? But anyway, those are the connections that women had that men failed to have, even though boys could have it with their mom, but they kind of forget about it once they're told to run outside and chop down a tree or burn down a village or whatever the heck they were teaching boys to do back then. Now, let's fast forward to about let's say 120 years ago. Sigmund Freud is on the forefront of psychology. Actually, he didn't invent it, but he's the most popular name, so we'll go with him. And he's speaking to these higher class Austrian couples, mostly women, and women are saying things like, I love him so much, but he doesn't love me back. And he's helping her deal with that. And the reason that is important is because 120 years ago, people did not admit to loving other people.
True.
And,
That was
and
embarrassment.
yes, it was a sign of weakness. And you know why it was a sign of weakness? Because only women loved. Get that? And therefore, to love was to be womanlike, and to be womanlike was to be weak. And I'm talking about men, of course, right? Men did not tell each other or their loved ones that they loved them. Men didn't tell their children they loved them. Men didn't tell their wives. You watch these old movies about men that told a woman, "I love you." Well, that was the exception to the rule. That's why they made a movie about it, right? You know, this is why Casanova, was so popular because he would tell women that he loved them. Oh my God, can you imagine a man going around telling women he loved them? You know why so many women loved him back or wanted to love him. Now, unfortunately, it became a trick, right? Because in Western society, and I say Western society because the indigenous cultures that live in this land that is now called the Americas, things were much different. But that hardly matters anymore because we kind of did away with all that culture, right? Uh, by hook or crook. But in Western cultures, sex became a bad thing. And sex was something that women had and men wanted. I know a lot of you are shaking your head, but this was the attitude. This is why during the
Well, the attitude was biblical because women did not want to have sex. That was like considered forbidden. And women were like the pure creatures, right?
well, yeah, yeah,
Something like that, somewhere
yeah,
along that line. I mean, that's the idea, is that women were supposed to be chaste to protect the children and to do all that stuff. That's why you didn't want your blood mixed up because, and I think a lot of it has to do maybe, Jose, with how they thought that babies were born. They didn't understand biology.
Okay,
They
you kind of phased you fuzzed out on me there. Repeat the last statement.
Well, don't you think a lot of that whole concept about that whole embarrassment and keeping women are supposed to be the chase, that whole cultural thing that came up has to do with how they actually thought that babies were born in those days. They thought men planted the seed and women were like the tree that grew the egg. You know what I mean? I mean, they didn't understand chromosomes. They didn't understand how any of that worked. They didn't understand biology.
Well, yeah,
So
I'll
the
grant you that.
idea is like you don't want to have a woman who is having sex maybe with other men because women are the ones that carry the babies.
Right, right.
So let's just get clear. It's all about like we want to make sure our kid is our kid, not you
Right.
can't have it, nobody else's kid.
Right, and it was for the sake of protecting property because someday, son, all this will be yours. But I want
Exactly.
to make sure that you are mine before I give all this to you, right? And it was about property, and of course, remember that women and children were considered the property of men in Western culture, right? Now, remember, we're talking about the desire to want to be in a couple. Um, the irony is that women, since little girls, were what's the word I'm looking for? They were programmed. They were taught.
Yeah, conditioned.
They
Yeah.
they were conditioned to think that their duty in life was to be married off and have children. That's it. That's all women were good for. And not only
That's your
were
primary directive.
right. And not only were you going to have children, but because of the religion that was involved, you had to have children from just one man. Now, when this concept was introduced, uh, post 1492 to the rest of the world, people were like, "What? Have children from just one man? What are you, crazy?" And
Yeah.
and those who resisted were done away with. So therefore, only those who complied had children. So they
Right.
became, you know, Christians and so on and so forth. Now the concept is still there in Africa today, as well as in South America, in these tribes that are still remote from what we call civilization. We still have couples who have other sexual partners.
Right.
With
It's
some,
very common. Right.
yeah,
It's
and some of them are women, and some and they're all considered wives. This
yeah.
woman may be a wife to seven men, and these
Yeah.
seven men may have, and they don't even live together, or one couple may live together and still, and they don't even consider it. Like in Espanol, we have the word Sancho or Sancha for the other man or the other woman.
Mhm.
Okay, they don't even have a word for it in most African tribal societies because that's just the way it is. It's natural. Now, do
I
you
saw a
think?
lady interviewed and they were asking her if she became like wearing the Western clothes and everything. And she was about probably in her mid 40s or 50s. And the interviewer asked her, "Well, are you glad that we came?" And she said, "No, I miss my old life. Like that was fun. It was a fun way to live. Everybody was happy. Now we're miserable.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Now
Now,
there's fighting. Everybody fights."
now, that is the reason, that is the main reason I believe that coupling is unnatural. And when I mean coupling, I mean one on one coupling. Yes, we're gonna couple. Yes, when you meet a man that you want to, you know,
You
hoping to
mean
be with,
monogamy is unnatural?
well, yes, but that's a totally different argument. I mean,
Well,
when
isn't monogamy coupling? Isn't that what we're talking about? Like the same thing? Coupling
well,
is monogamy.
maybe I should define coupling, because when I define coupling is you being with someone, you living with somebody, you being um in the home, you sleeping with somebody,
Okay.
waking up and having coffee in the morning, and he goes to work or not, and you do your thing, and then at night you're back together again. You're a regular thing. You're a couple, right?
Okay.
Uh, you until death do us part, right? Um, that's
That's
discipline,
my definition of monogamy.
right? Right. Well, there's already. I mean, monogamy is a myth, because unless you redefine monogamy, um, it doesn't exist. Monogamy means one partner, and if you've been divorced, sorry, you already missed out on the monogamy boat.
Yeah,
But
but there are some people who are monogamous. I
yeah,
mean, I've known
but
some people that have been together since the get, from the very first.
yes, but by all means, but I will suggest that they are the exception to the rule, right?
Very true. And
They're
actually, you know what? They're idolized. And yet, in lots of those instances, that, in fact, in every instance that I know them, they have a chaotic, I would never tolerate the way that they
uh,
get treated on either side. I would like, sucks both ways.
yeah, yeah. See
But
now,
their marriage is more important to them than anything else. They doesn't matter what they do, that they are sticking with it till the bitter end. They don't care.
oh yeah. See, I've got a neighbor who's a widow, and she's been a widow now for about, I'm gonna say, 7 years. Part, and she can't maintain it. And I go and I talk to her and I say, hey, have you thought about marrying somebody else so he can come in here and start fixing up your house? And she says, oh no, I'm going to stay loyal to my husband until I die. That was my promise to him. And
Wow.
I'm like, okay, that's more power to you, but your house is falling apart, and you can't afford to fix you can't afford to fix it.
You better get busy and start watching those YouTube videos on how to fix your house then, lady.
Yeah.
Do it yourself if you're not going to find
Help
someone.
people up. I help her out, and people are like, oh, look, Jose's getting in with the widow, and I'm like, this is what I do. By the way, I have a reputation of being a ladies' man because I go around helping widows. Now, between you and me, Lonnie, I enjoy that reputation, because between you and me, it's completely wrong, but it's okay. It's almost like enjoying being a Casanova, vicariously through my reputation. you
It
know
might help you find a girlfriend if you want one. Huh?
yeah, yeah. See, now and that's a big if. But anyway, yes, yes, I love the idea of waking up in the morning, as you do, waking up in the morning and rolling over, and there's your partner, and you put your arm over his shoulder or her shoulder, whichever way you swing, it doesn't matter to me, and you put your face up against hers, and both of you have wonderful morning breath, not that ugly stuff that is true, and you both kiss and you say, morning, oh, I love waking up next to you. Yes, I love it. I love it. But the fact is,
The way you say that. Oh, you can have a commercial with that.
you could, but the fact is, you probably feel better waking up in the morning and stretching out and not worrying about hitting your elbow in somebody's face or kicking your legs until you're comfortable without worrying about, damaging somebody's genitalia accidentally, you know. And at that moment, life is good because you slept well because you had the whole bed.
Well, you know what my real thing about that is? I love waking up in the morning and being able to make noise.
Hmm.
Because I'm like a bird. I wake up chirping. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
which is why this 8 o'clock venue to me has not been at all a burden. Because really, I'm up and my brain is thinking, and I enjoy engaging people. I think it's important. But for many people in partnerships, like they're like, I need the morning. Be quiet. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
you know, since you shared that, let me share a little bit about myself. I have always been a morning person until recently, and you were the victim of my conversion, on February 14th, where I slept until 11 o'clock practically. But anyway,
well,
I used to wake up,
congratulations.
well, I used to wake up early in the morning and be chipper, and I would be the one to wake up the kids gently so they can go to school in a happy mood, right? Uh, One time when I was married, I spoke to my wife, who was not a morning person, and I said, I don't want you to make me breakfast. I want you to want to make me breakfast,
Yeah,
right?
amen to that. Yeah.
And and so a couple of days later, I woke up and I was getting dressed and everything. Of course, I was in the U.S. Army, so I had to get up, before the birds, right? So I was getting dressed, and actually, I had already come back from our physical training and was showering and was getting dressed, and she kind of rolled over in the bed and sleepily said, "Uh, you want breakfast?" Right, right. And and I kind of stood there in a huff and just smiled and said, "No, thank you. You go ahead and sleep." And she went back to sleep. And I thought, did I just get what I wanted? Was that what I asked for? I guess I should have, been more specific about what exactly what I wanted, right? Uh, but that was my couple, of course, and that was the wife to whom I was married for 15 years. Now, for all in for all intent and purpose, that was a successful marriage, right?
Right. Right.
You know,
That's right.
15 years, 1 year, 1 day can be a successful marriage. Suppose you guys get married and you live happily ever after until the next day he gets hit by a bus and dies. Did you have a successful marriage? Yes, you did. Did it
That's
last?
right. That's right.
Now herein lies the issue. Till death do us part. Ooh, that's the part that scares a lot of people, especially a lot of men. Now, in relationships in our Western society, women have continued to evolve while men have lingered in the past. Men still think that knuckles dragging on the ground makes a real man, right? Men are still bodybuilding and trying to be this hunk of a man and trying to impress a woman. And the problem is that women, although they have evolved, they still tend to like that caveman sort of deal, you know?
Well, it's the same. I mean, honestly, I think men have intentionally been held back. I think men in our current culture were stilted in the 60s. When they went after the women's movement, they went after men's liberation also. And men, they weren't even out of the closet yet, so to speak, in terms of their role modeling. So, that's, but I think that it's not just men are heel draggers. Women like it. I mean, it's the whole dynamic of it all. It's not just all of that. I think a lot of it has to do with the trauma that we had as children on how we interpret our current life
Well, true. And our
and our
role models.
relationships. That's the problem. We have a ton of damaged people in our culture, like emotionally damaged because they're coming out of that their post-Victorian parents who were all mixed up and all confused, and a lot of stuff had happened. And so everybody, and then there was war. War had big issues with how men treated their children and the trauma that they went through, and there was no help. I mean, it was just really sad the way our current culture has developed all this. So it's not just the men are dragging their heels and acting like apes. I mean, it's, look at Kim Kardashian. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
Well, yes, and I agree. Although, boy, uh, you were probably you need like a 4-hour show to discuss all those topics. You know, I'm trying to stick to the relationship here. And yes, you're right.
But that goes to the heart of the relationship, though. This is my point, why I sort of drag all these mixed up ideas in there, is because we're entering in this idea of, oh, I want to be in a happy relationship, and then you find like, oh, the perfect relationship, and then you realize like, not only am I not perfect, they're not. It's just not like it. It's a continual process of growth. This is why we have to walk in love. This is why I say love is greater than fear, because the reason that all the hostility, all that stuff, it's fear-based. If we walk in love, you let stuff shake off your back. We give unconditional love to our children so unconditionally. They can do so much when they're little tiny kids, like, oh, that's okay. And we just like keep working on it and make an effort not to like, be freaked out about it all.
Right. Now the catch-22 is love is greater than fear, but it has to be unconditional love across the board. Across the board.
Exactly.
Okay. And then you have the issue of, oh, sure, you love me, but you love everybody, So
Well,
is it special? And I say yes, because
yes.
it's not about falling in love, which is what we have been led to believe. I happen to think falling in love is a sexual thing. Okay, when it's with a romantic partner, we can fall in love with our kids, and yes, you can be in love with your kids because that's an emotion, a connection. But I'm talking about a romantic connection with someone with whom you are considering partnering or coupling with, right?
Oh, okay.
Now, when you fall in love with somebody, my opinion is that is sexual and it's important. I far be it from me to demean the importance of sex, because that is what we have. If it weren't for sex, women would be alone, because men can make their own sandwiches eventually. you know but if
Well,
it
this
weren't,
is why there's a lot of women alone now. Like a lot of women that I have met, just are like, they really could care less about sex, and for them that just means being alone.
right. Now the problem the problem, you kind of touched on the abuse that we have, that we come up from as children, and so on and so forth. Now there was one abuse of women, especially of little girls, that is still alive today. You touched on it just now, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was a time, remember I said sex is something women had that men wanted, not something women wanted. Right? This is what we were taught. If a woman enjoyed sex, then why should a man marry her and support her? Right? If she was getting just as much pleasure from sex as he was. I still know women today. I still know women that I went to school with that still believe they don't enjoy sex. And I call it a psychological castration of women,
Mm-hmm.
because they were taught, no, you don't like sex. You only give sex to the man to keep him in the house. And I
Well,
was
I think that speaks to their trauma. They must have been traumatized as children or as somewhere in their life sexually. People
well
shut down.
it was the religious thing. And it was very
That's still
strong.
sexual trauma. The religious thing is still sexual trauma. I think that's just ridiculous. You don't have to beat somebody up physically to destroy them.
Yeah, right. And it's a tough issue in our culture because
Yeah.
we don't like to talk about sex. It's a bad thing, right? Ooh, it's a bad thing. And if a child asks you about sex, oh my goodness, we can't discuss sex with this child. I'll be accused of molesting the child. you know, uh, in the movie, what movie was that? A stupid Adam Sandler movie where he adopts a little boy, and the little boy he throws the little boy in the bath, and the little boy says, "Why do I still have my underwear on?" And Adam Sandler says, "Well, because I'm not sure what the rule is about little boys being naked in front of grown men." And I'm like,
Wow. Did he
you know,
really say that?
yeah, that was the movie. And the trouble is that
Wow.
these movies are maybe based on society, but they form society.
Yeah,
They had the
that's programming. I mean, that's bizarre.
right.
It's
And
such an offense, especially since we know in Hollywood what happens there. I mean,
yeah, yeah, for real, especially
it
now with
is.
all the pedophilia going on and
Well, it's
everything.
not now. Now it's just being exposed now. It's been going on for since it was conceived.
Yeah, well, certainly, yeah, it is just now being exposed. Although I disagree. I mean, I've seen documentaries from the 70s. It was being exposed a long time ago, but the powers that be are the ones involved, so they can cover it up
Yeah.
really easy. And people tend to think that information um, began the day that they became aware of it,
Right.
and and that's wrong. Yes, it has a lot to do. Yes, relationships has a lot to do with our childhood. Do we want to take it there? We only have 20 minutes or so
But
left.
I don't know that it's not just about the childhood, but I think what it does is it fundamentally it establishes your sense of well-being and your inability to interact. Like if you feel secure about yourself, you're more willing to make the effort to interact. That's what it's. I mean, we don't have to get into the whole thing of. We all know that our childhood affects our relationship, but I mean, in terms of feeling that need to couple. So this is what I mean. When there's a void in your life from a very primal age, you end up feeling like you need to fill the void. And I think that's where the romantic relationships, and I think you're right about that, that it is about the just the coupling does mean it's a sexual attraction because a lot of older couples, they're a couple, but they would never dream of having sex with anybody else because they're
Right.
romantically involved again, even though they haven't had sex in 30 years. You
Yeah.
know what I
And
mean?
and that's okay. If someone has managed to reach that point, more power to them. I love them, but I worry about the psychology behind that sort of thinking. But that's okay if it works for them, as long as they're not messing up anybody else, right? Which is
Right,
probably what happens if they had children, right? Right?
right.
Because the first thing we do when we are in a failed relationship is we think we failed because mom and dad were together for 100 years. Where did I
Exactly.
go wrong? And I'm like, well, it was a different world, and this is the most important uh, the most important aspect in the workshops that I perform. My mother divorced my father after 25 years of marriage, married her second husband almost immediately, and when she died at 88, at the age of 88, she had been married to him. Let me do the math. Um, 50 years,
Wow.
right? She had been married for 75 years of her life, got married. Now, she got divorced, which was the weird thing because all of her sisters, most of her sisters, but
I bet they had
married.
a heart attack after all those long years. Her family probably did not approve.
Well, it was, and that was the deal. But back then, how could you uncouple if you felt that you coupled with the wrong person? Till death do us part. And consequently, women were the ones dying because men found another woman and killed their wives so they could couple with a new wife legally. And this is why historically it used to be Now get these words. I'm going to use these words on purpose. It used to be illegal to get divorced in every state of the Union of the United States of America. It was illegal to get divorced until women started petitioning their congressmen to allow them to divorce so that men would stop killing women. Now,
Is that what really
this,
changed the laws? Was that women
yes,
literally were being killed so that their spouses could find another partner?
because that was it. There was no way. If a man were to leave his wife and shack up with another woman, he was a bigamist. Okay.
But he could
And
not get divorced.
he could not get divorced. Can you see the catch-22? How is he going to get away from facing a prison term? Right? If he was a bigamist, he would go to jail. Anyway, so
Wow.
men took this fact and said, look, the government is not letting us have a successful marriage. Now our wives can get divorced. Well, instead of changing to become more desirable husbands, we blamed the government. And you still can see a little bit of that today. As a matter of fact, there's a YouTube channel. I forget. I used to actually subscribe to it so I could keep up with the arguments these guys were using. And my heart goes out to them because they're so misled. But, what can you do, right? Uh, there's actually a YouTube channel that is like the anti-woman channel, and this guy is constantly posting how women hate men, when in fact he is just emphasizing how he hates women, right? And he's not gay. He's not, he's somebody who wants a woman in his life, but he doesn't understand that women have evolved and men have failed to evolve. And now the problem with men evolving is that women have the option to devolve whenever they want to. How can a knuckle dragger caveman put up
Yeah.
with those changes? And now I'm not saying it's women's fault, but it ends up being a sort of game, and I hate to equate it to a game, but it ends up being a sort of game. Now, men, yeah, God bless us. I think we need coupling more than women do.
Oh, that's for sure. I give you that one.
You, you
I
know,
mean, to be honest, that's actually a true statement. But I think in that statement, that is why, like, I think you know, this is why I think as human beings we're meant to, but I also think that, in relation to this whole annual thing around Valentine's Day, is that you're not less than because you don't have a partner. Your life is, this is the framing that women, even single men, everyone feels when these comments are made very frequently about single people, not just women, about, something is wrong in your life if you cannot be a partner. People constantly make, now, it doesn't even matter how you feel about it yourself. It's like the cultural norm. It is so bizarre. It's a very interesting thing. We at a very deep level, Jose. So this is why, we're. I think this is why I like this conversation, because it's allowing people who are single out there to rethink how they came with those unconscious thoughts that pop up, and then when people say things to you, or, I mean, it's so bizarre how people talk about the status of being single for a
yeah,
long period of
yeah,
time.
yeah, and it's seldom, particularly when you're speaking to women, because there is no good word for a single woman. You're an old maid, you
That's
know.
it. You
Yeah,
bitched her.
even the word spinster, ouch.
Yeah.
It's not really a bad word, but it's got those bad connotations. Now, if you're a man, you're a bachelor. You know.
Right. Right.
Now, if you're a woman and you're called a bachelorette, that has kind of connotations of being a whore. You know.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's a bad thing because it's a woman. It's not a bad thing if it's a man. Men are supposed to go out there and have as much sex as they can.
Right.
Beats me why. But that's the cultural thing, and it is important from a cultural perspective. And
Or Jose, the opposite. If a guy isn't out there whoring around, they're like, "Wow, isn't that so great of him not to be out there whoring around?" You know what I mean? It's like it's so bizarre. It's like
yeah,
the idea of how we frame things on an unconscious level. But this is why so many people stay in oppressed marriages. This is the
right,
answer because they're not strong enough, or they tell themselves they're not. People are much stronger than they really believe. They short sell themselves in love all the time. Love really is greater than fear, and you don't have to constrict yourself to a very narrow, narcissistic view of love. That's you know.
now that you mentioned that, let me point this out. Women, and I've been saying this for a long time, not only women, but especially women, before someone can love you, you have to learn to love yourself.
That's right.
Be- Before you can be happy with someone else, you must be happy with yourself.
That's right.
Now, the what the contrary to that works better for men. We want a damsel in distress
Right.
because
Exactly.
a damsel in distress does not love herself. She needs somebody. Right,
Mhm.
right. A damsel in
You need to
distress,
fix her, help
yeah,
her, fix.
exactly. And this is where women have evolved. Suddenly, laws have been passed, and women can support themselves
You
barely,
bet.
because but they can support themselves. So women
I
stop
support
needing.
myself
Yeah, way to go, and,
more
and
than
kudos to
barely.
you.
I mean, I refuse to like have that. I just like I don't know. But you were right about that. The women have changed their roles, and this is why we see that pushback in legislation. Jose, we have 10 minutes left. For people that are out there listening to our radio show today, you do give assistance to people around the country, emotional support anonymously, correct?
By all means, yes, and I prefer to do it through the Facebook chat, although it's far from confidential, and I do it free of charge, 24 hours a day when I can. Right.
That's an interesting thing. So you do it through writing.
Yeah, I also do it over the telephone.
Okay.
I do prefer texting, um, because on the telephone I can only do one thing. I can only speak to this one person, and I'm stuck on the phone, right? But I will
Yeah.
do it. I will do it, and I have done it. And it depends on the client, and I do consider you a client, so everything's confidential. And when I do it on text, I delete our conversations immediately, so there's no record of course. Facebook and the NSA has a record of it, but as far as I'm concerned, I will not be taken to court and forced to by subpoena to divulge our
Well,
conversations, right?
they won't need you. They have it on Facebook and the
Right,
NSA.
right. And I do it, through my cellular phone, through my landline.
So tell them
Excuse-
how to find you. And like, there's a million Tony Gonzalez's, right? Like on
yeah,
Facebook. So
yeah.
how do they find you? Like, how would someone find you? Like, do they type in emotional support or something like that, or what?
Uh, on Facebook, I do it through my Jose M. Gonzalez account, which there are only 7 million Jose M. Gonzalez's, so you shouldn't have any
Exactly.
trouble finding me,
Out
right?
of
But
Texas, right?
right, yes, in Texas alone, I do have Marriage Guy on Facebook. It's my business account, Marriage Guy.
Guide. Guide.
No, Guy, Guy.
Okay, marriage guy.
I, I,
GUY.
yeah, I'm Marriage Guy, and most people contact me through Marriage Guy. Excuse me. I don't have any friends on Marriage Guy, so if you try to friend me, I'm not going to friend you. But if you if you message me through Marriage Guy, I will contact you through Jose Gonzalez, right?
Okay.
And I can go through Marriage Guy too, except I'm not smart enough technologically to know how to do that. Two accounts at the same time open. Who knows? My head's gonna blow up, right? But now I do warn people that I am I exist to try to get you to reach peace through whatever is bothering you, because I am marriage guy and I'm the relationship coach. I get a lot of people get tr- trying to get me to help them figure out how to get the girl or how to get the guy.
Uh-huh.
And that is beyond my capacity. It's I can only help you realize that you are in control only of yourself and how to deal with that. Okay. And I am an ordained clergy person, so I am a pastor, but I am an omni-denominational pastor. So if religion plays a big part in your relationship, in your life, I can deal with that. I'm not going to say, oh, well, your religion is all wrong. My religion says you need to do this. I mean, I can connect with whatever faith you use. And faith, as we mentioned earlier, does seem to have a lot of power when it comes to our relationships, right? And because this is how we were raised.
I think faith sort of runs the roost in lots of people's lives. They stay because of their faith, or they think they have to. I mean, I know for sure it made an impact on me. I mean, it made me stay in a relationship for way too long, my first marriage, because I was married. That was it. I was thinking that was it forever.
I keep losing you. I keep
Me
losing you.
too. Well, you're fading in and out. We're not on a Skype. Are you on Skype?
Yeah, we're on Skype. I think we're on
Uh,
Skype.
well, you are in Texas, so.
Hey, don't blame
And I'm in
Texas. All right.
Oregon, so.
But I keep missing out like words that you're like the most important thing in my life is, and then you fade out.
Blah, blah,
So that
blah. You're like, fill in the blank. That's the fill in the blank conversation.
I just hope that the archive is going to be clear. I don't know if you
Oh,
guys.
I think the
I've
archive is clear. I believe that it is. Whenever I've had this happen, I think the archive is right.
Yeah, I've listened to a lot of the archive because I wanted to get. I used to have a regular show with oh shoot, what's his name? Vincent, right?
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
That's
Vincent
easy.
Easley, and I used to post them on a Facebook page so that I used to post the archives on the Facebook page so people could go in there and click on it and listen to it at their leisure, right? And I think we did about a year's worth of it. But my page is still getting a lot of likes, but I haven't updated it because I don't have a regular show. I do, you know, a guest show with you on occasion, and I got a couple of other radio shows that I do. But it was not consistent. It's not consistent now as it was, back then. Uh, and what I hope people gather from listening to me is that we have the power to be at peace within ourselves, and only when we reach that peace can we share that peace with someone else. The old concepts of fixing somebody or saving somebody failed. I wonder if I mentioned before on the show how the divorce rate in the United States of America peaked in 1978, then again in 1980, and then started falling regularly since. If the divorce rate today is over 60%, can you imagine what it was in 78 and 80?
Well, you know why? Because now people just aren't getting married like they used to.
Well,
That's
well,
part of why it's
exact,
falling, don't you think? And it was,
exactly.
but we went through that phase in the 70s and 80s when people were leaving long-term marriages. That was kind of an unheard of. I seem to recall there was a phrase at the time they called it. I don't remember it, but when people like my parents got divorced after 27 years of marriage, that shocked our family. And our
Yes.
neighbors, many of our neighbors, there was like a 10-year period where lots of people that we knew who had been in long-term relationships decided to chuck it, and it was like a cultural overthrow of the standard norm. So we kind of went through that phase. I think that's why it's been declining, Jose.
Right. Well, I have two theories about why it peaked, and of course, I agree with you with why it's declining. The decline is less people are getting married, and therefore less people are divorcing, and the people that are getting married are more committed towards marriage. Okay,
That's right.
that's not that's not necessarily a good thing, but it's working for them, and that's all that matters. Right, right. Now, because you mentioned about how some people were devoted to the marriage regardless of what the situation was. Well, it's okay if it's a good situation, but we have a lot of, remember I was referring to
Yeah.
men and knuckle dragging. We have a lot of abusive relationships, and it's not
Yeah.
always just the men being abusive. There are women that are very abusive as well,
That's right.
and ultimately, and this is my history. Ultimately, when a woman tends to be a lot more physically abusive towards men because she doesn't do that much damage. She'll slap him, hit him, punch him, and it's no big deal. But when he's finally had enough and punches her, she bounces off the walls because he's much stronger than she is, right? And therefore statistics show that men are more abusive, but men won't complain when they get abused. But anyway, I digress. What I wanted to say was, oh shoot, did I lose my train of thought? I think I did. I, I think I did. Okay, we were talking about uh, the long term staying married long term. Uh, in the old days, it was a new world because it was till death do us part. Oh yes, my theory about why it peaked in 78 and 80. I think it's because in something that happened in 1960. And in 1960, something was introduced to Western culture that changed women. And that introduction was the birth control pill, where women, oh, and I mentioned this to you before in another show, remember? So where women were now able to have sex without getting pregnant. Well, in 1960, it was introduced, and most women said, "Oh, I'm not going to take that. I'm not putting that in my body." By 1965, a few more women were doing it. By 1970, a few more women were doing it. But the catch is, by 1978, girls who were born in 1960, as far as they were concerned, the pill had always existed, and therefore it was acceptable for them. So when these girls turned 18 in 1978, there was a big free love movement because girls could have sex without having to marry the guy, without getting pregnant. In 1980, these girls turned 20, which is the age before freedom, before you're 21. Now, also in that time frame was a big push for the Equal Rights Amendment, which is a big laugh, but there was a big push for it in the mid 70s. Women really thought the Equal Rights Amendment was going to pass during the 70s, and then they were going to have equality. By the way, the Equal Rights Amendment has been on the table in Congress since, I think, at least the 1940s, and has yet to pass. Have yet to reach true equality in our society.
Jose, we have about 15 seconds left. I'm sorry I didn't get through to you. I wanted to let you finish your sentence, but we have about 15 seconds. Thank you for joining us. You've been listening to Jose Gonzalez. You can find him. He's called The Marriage Guy on Facebook. And put your courage feet on. Thank you, Jose, for joining us, and we'll talk with you guys soon.
My name is S.M. Gibson, and I am the host of